Hello everyone, this week the book that I am giving summary is Emotional Agility. Now the title of the book is really beautiful. It says, Get Unstuck, Embrace Change and Thrive in Work and Real Life. This is by far the best book I have read so far because the anecdotes, the stories that were given in those books, they were very relatable to the complexities and the life of modern world and what you and I go through on a day-to-day basis. Basically, the book is about being emotionally agile. How can you be nimble-minded and how can you deal with your negative emotions in a way that helps you thrive in this modern world and that benefits you in your day-to-day life. So basically, if we have to give a brief definition of emotional agility, it is about living with more intention. Now, living with more intention is very, very important because as Viktor Frankl, a psychiatrist who survived the Nazi death camp, he also said that, between stimulus and response, there lies a space. And between that space lies the power to choose a response. Stimulus means everything that's happening around us and that's affecting us is the stimulus. The sound that you hear from outside, the people that come to your life and they say something, that is all stimulus. And how do you respond to all those things that are happening to you is the response. For example, let me give you a recent incident. Just a few days back, I was talking to a very good friend. We were having a good conversation and all of a sudden, he started getting a little naggy. I immediately felt very bad and that happened once, and then suddenly, just a few minutes later, he turned off his camera and that just blew up my mind and I just cut the call. He tried contacting me the next day like 20 times, but I still did not respond. And that shows that, sometimes how emotionally rigid we can be. We are just so stuck and we are just so mad about just that one thing that has happened that we forget our why or we forget that equation that we have with the other person, and we are drowned away by our emotional zest, and that is actually killing our productivity, that is killing a lot of our time. And so how can you be nimble-minded? How can you deal with things that sometimes upset you? How can you deal with all those things that might not be the best possible things that you wish for yourself? For example, having a negative self-image about yourself. What do you do about that? How can you deal with that? What is a better way to deal with anxiety, depression, and pain if you have any? So basically, emotional agility opens up an entire arena of possibilities for you and I to choose our intelligent response to the unpredictable circumstances that you and I can face in our day-to-day lives. So Susan David, who was the author of the book, why did she actually write this book? She has a very strong reason for writing this book. She says she was 16 years old when she lost her dad. And when she lost her dad, she was actually in South Africa, and back in that time in South Africa there was apartheid going on. That apartheid actually caused a lot of chaos and cruelty in the whole country, and that led her to think, how do people deal with such unpredictable circumstances and such chaos in their lives? Because anyway, we have to deal with what's coming. But how do we deal with all these things in an intelligent way? And then at the age of 16, Susan lost her father. And in response to that, she says that she had an English teacher who was very, very kind-hearted and somebody who encouraged journaling. And when that person, that teacher, encouraged journaling, Susan actually imbibed it in her own life, and she realized when she faced those negative emotions, those traumas, those pain, it was very easy for her to look at the face of the pain or that trauma and not be scared by it. In emotional agility, Susan David has given a 4-step paradigm to actually deal with all the plethora of emotions that we face on a day-to-day basis. Basically, the first step that Susan David tells in this whole emotional agility journey is that you need to show up. Woody Allen has written in his book Showing Up that 80% of the success comes by literally showing up. So showing up to those negative emotions, to those uncomfortable emotions that you are not ready to see, that is very, very important, because when you look at the face of that negative emotion, it is better and it is easy to deal with it rather than moving away from it. In our modern life, actually, we have been surrounded with so much consumer intrinsic marketing techniques which try to pull us away from our problems. Having a bad relationship, try a new app. Getting bad food, go to this new website. Having a bad day, try this app. So basically, constantly we have been bombarded with information that says that you just don't have to deal with your problems. They can be dealt with apps, this, that. But dealing with the problem, looking at the face of the problem, is the first and foremost important step in emotional agility. When you look at the face of your problem, that's when you show courage and you are able to go to the next step. That is stepping out of that emotion that's holding you back. So as Viktor Frankl said in her book, Man's Search for Meaning, he says this one very important point, that human beings have the power to choose the response, the space between the stimulus and response. When we create the space between the thinker and the thought, we are easily able to see at our problems in an open, non-judgmental way, in a way that's more compassionate and that calls for more curiosity to the solutions of the problems that we are facing. For example, if you have an issue with a colleague, rather than taking your frustration back to your personal life and being very anxious about that particular incident, the best way would be first to face the emotion that yes, you are actually facing a disappointment from a colleague, and then just sit down and relax and create that space between the stimulus and response, and think what would be the best way to do. The best way you will find would be with a calm mind, and the best would be actually going to that colleague and ask the reason, or have a discussion, a healthy discussion where you're curious rather than blaming the person. You are more curious to ask what led that person to do what he did. And when you understand that thing with compassion, you would be easily able to move on, and you would be able to let go of that thing. And the third important thing in emotional agility is walking your why. What are your idols? What are your core values? What make you who you are? And align those values with your solution. Because when you align your values with your solution, it is very easy to come to a solution which you won't regret. Do you want to go to the gym or binge eat snacks with your friends after a Friday? What is it that you want to do? So these are all questions that you need to ask yourself through your values. If you're a person who wants to be healthy, then this is like a choice point, and the author calls this is a choice point. You have to make a choice at this point of time, that should you binge eat snacks or should you actually eat healthy food. Basically, having clear vision or clear value of your life helps you, take up a solution that will benefit you. And the fourth and the most important step in emotional agility is basically moving on from that problem. How can you move on from that problem and go to a life that's thriving, that's successful, that's happy? So basically there are two things that author details here. The first thing that author details is the tiny tweaks principles. What are these tiny tweaks? Do you want to be an active gym member? Don't start by going to the gym half of your day and being so exhausted the next day that you don't have the energy to hit the gym again. Instead, make tiny tweaks. What are these tiny tweaks? These are very small actions that you do on a consistent day-to-day basis that changes the frame of your life altogether. Because if you see, our life is made up of small frames of these moments. And when you change these moments bit by bit, the whole movie of your life drastically changes. So this is the tiny tweaks principle, and I think it is one of the most powerful principles, because unlike the advertisements and the things that have been shown to us that demands for dynamic and big shifts, the research shows that tiny tweaks, that is small actions, they are better than these dynamic shifts, because when you take small actions, these small actions only require small energy, and with the small energy you can be confident that every day you can do that task very well. And then there was one more principle that was told in the book, that was the seesaw principle. The seesaw principle says that you have to seek a balance between challenge and competence. You have to constantly challenge yourself, but also be at a point where you are not just too overwhelmed and you feel a bit competent about your skills. So seeking that balance. In this, there's an example of Sarah Blakely is the youngest self-made billionaire, and she actually, when she would come back after work, her father would ask her one question every day: what is it that you failed at? That question wasn't meant to embarrass her in any way or to make her feel bad about her abilities or about herself. That question was meant to just ask her that what are those challenges that she's facing on a day-to-day basis, and how is she dealing with her failures and the things that might not be going as perfect as she thinks. The author says that it's okay to fail sometimes. It's okay if you are not able to do your best sometimes. What's very important is learning from those experiences and being agile in your approach, that yes, if I failed now, I can move on, I can bounce back again, and I can make a big change. Actually, I think this book, Emotional Agility, is one of the finest book that we all need to read about how we can deal with our emotions in a very, very healthy way. And the framework that's given is very, very beautiful. After each chapter there is like a short note, a short summary of the chapter that is given. That's very, very useful. And the 4-step framework that Susan David has given, the first step is basically showing up to your emotions, not brushing your emotions under the carpet, just facing them. And the second step that she has told is stepping out of those emotions and looking at them with more curiosity, with a more open mind, and with more acceptance. And the third step that she says is walking your why, aligning the solutions to your problems according to your core values. And the fourth step is basically moving on through tiny tweaks and the seesaw principle, where you try to seek a balance between challenge and competence. So I think this is a must-read book for every individual, because today's modern life is fast-paced, it's very complicated, and it's ever-changing. We need to be very emotionally agile in these times, and we need to know how to deal with our emotions in a healthy and fruitful manner. So if you really like today's video, please make sure that you hit that subscribe button. You share this video with your friends and family members, and let me know the best part about this video through the comment sections below. Thank you so much. That was all from my side. Happy learning!